Discovered my husband has been introducing me as his sister to colleagues for years, leaving me questioning our entire marriage. My husband, I'll call him Josh, and I have been together for 6 years, married for 4, and we don't have kids. We have a really healthy and communicative relationship, we're both pretty easygoing and I really love him. He started working at a large accounting firm about 3 years ago, and from what he tells me he loves it there. He's made a lot of friends through his job and he goes out with them for drinks and social events quite often, and I've been totally okay with that. I'm quite introverted, so I've never been interested in meeting his colleagues or work friends, nor have I asked to. I've got my own circle of friends and I'm fine with us having separate friend groups. After what happened yesterday, it only just occurred to me that he has never actually asked me if I'd like to meet any of them, or go to one of his work events. I guess that's important context. Anyway, I'll start with what happened a few months ago, that I had brushed off until now. I was at a bar with some friends for a couple of Friday after work drinks, and a guy approached me. He was there with some friends, too. He looked slightly familiar, but I hadn't met him before. He seemed friendly enough, and he asked me, my name / right? I think I must have just given him a confused look, because he followed up with, I'm Jake, I work with Josh. I realized that I recognized him from some photos on my husband's phone. I don't use social media except for a private Instagram, so I'm not sure if he posted the photos anywhere, but we've got a very trusting relationship, so I look in his photos sometimes. Don't hate me. This is where it gets a bit embarrassing. I'm a bit socially awkward and so I struggled to end the conversation, but he just kept talking at me. I guess he was already a couple of beers deep, but while he was talking, he said something like, it's great that you guys are still so close. I haven't talked to my brother in ages. At the time I was like, huh? But I just assumed he was drunk and not making sense, so I ignored it. He started to get a little flirty, so I turned to my friends and we left shortly after that. I didn't say anything to them about it and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I also decided not to tell my husband that I had met his coworker Jake, not to hide it, but because I figured the guy wouldn't even remember talking to me, and I didn't want to make it awkward for Josh at work by telling him his colleague tried to hit on me. I just thought no harm no foul. But, yesterday morning, I was out walking our dog, Monty. He's a cross between a few breeds and has very unique markings, this matters I promise, and was on my way to my regular cafe, which is in town. I was waiting in line to order, and the guy in front was an older man. He got his coffee and turned around, but stopped and looked at my dog and goes, hello Monty. Monty was super excited to see him, apparently, and so I guess that the guy was another colleague of Josh's, because Josh brings the dog to the office a couple of times a week. I thought it was sweet, to be honest, so I smiled at him and said hi. He introduced himself. I guessed correctly that he was a colleague, but then he said something like, aren't you a good sister, walking his dog for him? I was so confused that I didn't even know how to react at first, so I stumbled on my words and just said it's my dog. I regret it, but I genuinely couldn't bring myself to correct him and say that I'm Josh's wife and not his sister. It was just too awkward, and I just wanted to leave because I think was suddenly dawning on me what might have been going on. He asked me something about sharing a dog, but I was able to escape the conversation by being next in line to order my coffee, and he left. I seriously don't know what to do, because what the fuck? Do I even ask my husband about this? Part of me is just assuming or hoping that it's a mistake, that he doesn't talk about me much at work and they assume we are related because we both have brown hair. But the thought that he has been telling his coworkers that I'm his sister, and evidently they have seen what I look like, so they must have seen photos, makes my stomach churn. I don't even know how I would broach the subject with him. I need some help. What would you guys do in this situation? I have only told one friend what happened because it's so weird and embarrassing, and she has jumped straight to time to plot his downfall, because she's my ride or die, love her, but I don't want to immediately assume the worst or ruin my marriage over something that could be nothing. I'm sorry for the long and rambly post, but I would really appreciate any and all advice. First thing I just want to clear up, I've seen a lot of people suggesting I have crippling social anxiety, or am severely introverted, which I suppose you could glean from the way I explained what happened, but I'm not. I meant that I'm slightly introverted in that I'm not the most eager to meet lots of new people at once, especially a bunch of finance brothers whose weekends consist of unending sports bar beers, where I assume I would be mansplained everything until my ears bleed. Prob a negative assumption, but I'm sure some of you know what I mean. I suppose you could say that I'm confrontation averse in that I'm quite laid back and prefer to keep a conversation easy and positive. I don't like it when things are awkward and correcting when people misrecognize me as one of those things, but I'm not terrified of confrontation. Also, my husband and I do share some mutual friends. I didn't explain that well, but our lives are not entirely separate. The way he acts towards me around our mutual friends is extremely affectionate and normal. It is only his work friends that I have never interacted with. I've also seen some people suggest that what is going on is equivalent to my husband beating me and me hopelessly wondering whether I should break up with him, or that I'm stupid for thinking my relationship was healthy when it clearly isn't. Like, damn, cut me some slack. I'm a real person and this is an entirely alien and bizarre situation for me. My first reaction wasn't to assume the worst, but I do appreciate that you all have made me certain that it is a big deal. I guess I needed confirmation that the things that happened are enough proof that Josh has been purposefully lying, and they weren't just mix-ups. I'm going to talk to him today, and ask him directly why he's telling his coworkers that I'm his sister. I followed the advice of writing my points down so that they don't get lost if I get emotional, lol. I will do my best not to let him slither out of it, and I hope he has some proof that his colleagues know I'm his wife. I know that's not the theatrical confrontation you guys were hoping for, but it's a Saturday, and I can't wait. Wish me luck, thank you all. Update 1. On Saturday morning I woke up earlier than my husband. He was very hungover, so he was like sleeping a rock. But you guys will be proud of me, because I followed some advice and decided to look through his phone properly while he was sleeping. I have been on his phone so often just pissing around on it that I had never thought to check anything very deeply. I know his passcode by heart. I checked all the expected things like Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger, his iMessages, etc., and I didn't find anything that set off alarm bells to me. But I know from some comments that people who are cheating are good at covering their tracks and hiding messages, so I kept looking around. I saw he had a folder called Work, and so I looked in there, and he had a couple of Microsoft apps, Outlook, Authenticator, OneNote, etc., but he also had MS Teams. So I opened that up and had a look around. It did feel like I might have been breaking laws looking at his work messages, but I obviously had too. Anyway, I was already upset to see that he had a bunch of one-on-one chats with several female coworkers. Which, at first glance, is obviously not an issue, because everyone works with people of the opposite gender and are required to communicate with them. But a couple of them were vaguely flirty, nothing I would call egregious, but there would be the occasional message between them with some playful innuendo or a wink emoji. These upset me, obviously, and they did send me into a bit of a spiral, but I didn't find anything that suggested he was having an out-and-out affair with any of them. Still, I followed someone's suggestion of screenshotting the messages and I airdropped them to myself. I still wanted some evidence of the lie, though, some proof of Josh telling someone that I was his sister directly. A commenter suggested that I go through his messages and search for keyword sister. I wanted to reply to your comment and say thank you for the idea, but the post was locked, so I couldn't, but thank you. So I searched for sis on his MS Teams, hoping to find results for both sister and sis. A bunch of messages from all hands group chats or one-on-one chats came up from other people, all unrelated and about their own sisters or whatever. But my heart dropped out my ass, lol, when I saw there was a direct message from Jake, the guy from the bar, to Josh from a Monday a few months ago. Jake's messages said, ran into your sis at the bar / on Friday, she's single, right? And my husband had the fucking gall to reply, nah, she's married. I literally almost burst into flames on the spot when I saw that. I can't even describe how much I was shaking after reading those messages. Firstly, that I could have confronted Josh about this months ago. I was, and still am, so furious with myself for that. Josh would have been fucking praying I didn't remember meeting Jake or that I wouldn't mention it, and he would have been counting his lucky stars that I never did. He probably thought he was hot shit for getting away with that, and I nearly burnt a hole through the floor thinking about it, lol. But secondly, I was just in shock that he had the balls to tell this guy that I'm the one who is married, because he doesn't want anyone having it on with me, but he is allowed to coyly flirt with every fucking woman in the office? Anyway, I kept going back through the search results on his MS Teams, and eventually I got as far back as 2-ish years ago, and I did in fact find a message from Josh himself to a group chat. It said me and sis in Nusa Dua. I clicked on that and saw that he had sent it alongside a bunch of photos of him and I from our holiday to Bali. We went to Bali for our second anniversary. I thought he probably chose those photos because he's shirtless and had been working out, so he looked hot in all of them. I was in tears seeing all of this, obviously. I took screenshots of those too and airdropped all of the screenshots to myself. Needless to say, I was devastated, and still am, to see all of that. I am still struggling to even process it at all. But that all happened on Saturday morning, and I immediately took myself to my friend's house. I'll call her Sophie. I went to her place to cry it out and show her what I found, and she was extremely supportive and probably more furious than me, lol. At around 1:30 p.m. I got a phone call from Josh, and I hung it up immediately. He sent me a few messages along the lines of, "Where are you, baby? I'm ordering food, want some? Sad to not wake up next to you this morning." Guys, I have to reiterate how much I love this man, and how fucking heart-wrenching it was to see him still acting like nothing had gone wrong. It took so much willpower to not just pretend none of it had ever happened and go home to him. I know a lot of you will yell at me or accuse me of being terrified of confronting him about this, which is not true. Please have some empathy. It takes me time to process my emotions, and I wouldn't have even been able to form a sentence if I tried to confront him immediately after seeing those messages. I needed some time away with Sophie to recollect myself, and so I stayed the night at her place. She ordered us Chinese and she helped me plan how I would confront him. I got a bunch more texts and calls from him as the evening progressed, and I eventually put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Sunday morning I woke up feeling more angry than sad, so I opened my phone and finally replied to his messages. Coming home now, need to talk. I kept it cryptic to make him squirm, to be honest, because I was /am fraught with emotions. I can't remember the entire conversation word for word, but I'll try to replay it as best I can. Long story short, I got home and he tried to hug me, but I refused him and we just stood in the kitchen. I did confront him like someone suggested. I just said, "Why have you been telling your coworkers I'm your sister?" I wish it would have been like a movie scene where the color drained from his face, or he immediately looked like a deer in headlights, but he didn't. It was like he had been girding himself for this confrontation for a while, because he just frowned at me and looked flabbergasted. He just said, "Huh?" This made me so angry. How are you going to pretend to be stupid after 3 years of lying? I basically said, "Don't play fucking dumb, 2 of your coworkers have greeted me as your sister, and I have proof of you telling them. And I know you're pretending to be single." Essentially, I asked him what he had to say for himself. He still played stupid. He became moderately defensive and just kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about," or, "Why would I lie about you?" I cannot describe how furious I was at this point, but I was in tears. I always cry when I'm angry, so he was trying to comfort me as if I was having some kind of irrational breakdown. I showed him the screenshot of his message saying me and sis, and I said something like, "You tell me." He just said, "I don't know what I'm looking at, and I'm confused." I got so angry that I left again, and went back to Sophie's, because it felt like a dead-end road. I didn't think I was going to get him to admit to anything, and I was just getting so furious I couldn't continue. He was really upset, and in tears, which to me was evidence that he knew he was lying and that he was going to have to come up with some explanation. He tried to get me to stay, but I told him that until you have something to say for yourself, we've got nothing to talk about. At like 8:30ish, he called me again and I did pick up. He basically asked for us to talk and he said he has some things to say, so I went back to our apartment. He had written out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper as if he had prepared a speech and sat me down on the couch. He asked me not to say anything while he was explaining himself. I'll write down the gist of what he said in bullet points. Anyway, I couldn't really think of anything to say at that point. He went to lock himself in the bathroom, and I just sat on the couch crying. I still don't know if I can trust what he said, and a lie that extreme is just baffling to me. If he can lie like that, for so long, what else could he be lying about? But his explanation and apologies seemed so sincere and genuine, and I guess to an extent what he said is believable. He has always been extroverted but very susceptible to peer pressure, especially from other blokes. If nothing else, to me, it's a sign of shocking immaturity. Anyway, I packed up a bag and went back to Sophie's, and I'm still at her place as I'm writing this. She said I can stay as long as I need to. I told Josh that I needed time away from him to think about everything and whether or not I believe him, or whether I can ever trust him again. He told me to take as long as I needed and that he will still be there if or when I get back, he said, even if it takes a year. Right now nothing feels real, I'm still dealing with the emotional whiplash from all of this and I can't keep food down or think about anything. I've taken the day off work and Josh told me he's going to take off the whole week. Sophie and my other friends have told me not to make a decision on anything until my head is clear. I spoke to my parents this morning and my mom says it's just a bump in the road, but she and my dad adore Josh so they're pretty biased, lol. That's where I am right now. I'll take some time before I consider my next steps. I can't say whether I'm leaning towards forgiveness or divorce, but those are really the only options. I kind of feel lost in a void at the moment. That's probably the best way to describe it, just emptiness. Now on to second story. Underestimated the skill involved in dishwashing at my girlfriend the chef's upscale bar, leading to an awkward debate over unskilled labor. I've been seeing this girl for 3 months who I'm pretty into. She's a professional chef, hot, and basically a badass. She smokes pot and drinks a lot more than me, but other than that I have no complaints. She's very assertive because she has to be in her line of work and luckily I'm into that, if you know what I mean. She works at an upscale bar, hence the drinking, where the food is really important and she's super talented so her dishes get written up in our local media which is so cool. It feels a bit like dating a celebrity when we go out because she seems to know all the industry people and we get free drinks and stuff. The problem came up when she was complaining about her job, which she does a lot. She says her boss is unsupportive and won't hire more help for the kitchen. Right now she does almost everything herself so her hours are crazy long and she's stressed all the time. I agree it doesn't make sense to be so short-staffed because it seems like the bar is always busy and they make good money. The owner is an old-school boomer guy who thinks she's overreacting, or so she says. I don't like feeling helpless when she complains about work so I offered to help wash dishes one night so she wouldn't have to work until 3 a.m. and we could go out. I made a lot of money in tech and retired early so I have some time on my hands. She looked surprised and laughed and said, "Thank you for the offer." I was kind of hoping she would turn me down but the way she said it was kind of patronizing so I pressed a bit. She went into professional mode and asked if I'd ever washed dishes before. I said, yes, obviously, but not in a restaurant or anything. Now she looked really annoyed and asked why I thought I could just jump in and wash dishes without any experience. I laughed at this and said anyone could wash dishes. Teenagers do it as their first job. She got offended and said I didn't understand the realities of kitchen work because it's not easy and dishwashers are the most important person in the restaurant. I thought that was a huge exaggeration. I worked at a Wendy's in high school and it's the same damn skill set. What she does is skilled but washing dishes is not skilled labor. She said there's no such thing as unskilled labor and I'd take you up on your offer if I thought you wouldn't mess up service. I thought that was really rude and misguided. No such thing as unskilled labor? Are you kidding me? And told her so. She told me I was condescending and presumptuous and she gets enough of that from her boss. The date was awkward for a while until she smiled and changed the subject but now I can't stop wondering if her boss doesn't have a point about her overreacting. Ida? Edit, she specifically said she needed a dishwasher. I didn't just pick it because I thought it was easy. Sorry that was unclear. Edit 2. All she said by way of explanation was I'd get run over. I asked what made it skilled and she said I was starting a bigger conversation that she didn't want to have right then while she was upset and not entirely sober. Fair enough. She, an experienced chef, told you that dishwashers are the most important person in the restaurant. You, who haven't worked in a food establishment since high school, are discounting her experience. You worked at a Wendy's which has a fixed menu, doesn't serve food on plates with flatware and uses paper cups. Dishwashing at a fast food restaurant is not the same as at full-service restaurant. Your attempt to wash dishes would disrupt service at your date's restaurant. Fitting in with a team of workers and know what to do is a key part to running a successful restaurant kitchen. Washing dishes may be a humble position, but it's absolutely crucial to the running of the kitchen. It's similar to engine oil in a car, you don't realize how crucial it is until the engine seizes. You are dating someone who works full-time in a professional cooking environment and you responded as condescending there are practically no jobs that a person can jump in and do without training. That is what she meant by no job is unskilled labor. You're a snob. You made it worse by continuing along with your insistence of demeaning a job that she finds extremely important. Without proper dishwashing, she can't do her job. She can't plate on dirty or improperly cleaned dishes. She values her dishwashers. Update 1. I reached out and apologized for mansplaining something she obviously knew more about and explained I was hurt by her patronizing response to my offer to help. She apologized and thanked me again for the offer, explaining she thought I was joking and never would have reacted that way if she'd known it was being sincere. She apologized for complaining so much and explained that it wasn't always a crisis situation but the bar has doubled its business in the last year and now she's burning out. The situation with her boss is stressing her out even more than anything. She's approached him several times and he keeps brushing her off. It's almost hard to believe a business owner could be so in denial, but I feel really bad that I reminded her of him. I asked if we could talk about the skilled versus unskilled labor argument tonight and she said, "Is it okay if we don't?" Things were going so well. I'm kind of frustrated by this because she made such a big deal out of it, but I'll respect her wishes. Update 2. I have to cancel tonight. I'm sorry for the short notice. I don't feel up to going out. This is because about the labor thing, isn't it? I'm sorry for asking so many questions. I really want to understand you better. No, it's because you think it's about that. You keep demonstrating that you're not listening to me. We clearly have communication issues and it shouldn't be this hard to understand each other at this stage. That's no one's fault. We don't have communication issues. You don't like to explain your assertions after you get called out on them. You need to understand when you call someone incompetent you're going to have to back it up. So you're not just canceling dinner, this is a breakup. I thought you could have held out a little longer to tell me in person. That would have been the decent thing to do. I never said you were incompetent or even implied it. You're putting words in my mouth. You interrogate me and won't listen to my answers. You assume the worst interpretation of everything I say. Look, I'm sorry, I thought this was the best way to do this and I'm sorry if I was wrong. I figured it's only been a couple of months and I didn't want to make you drive all the way from location. We could still meet up if you want to talk. You implied it. I thought you would have held out for one more free dinner. Blocked and good riddance. It seems like you actually despise your now ex. I'm glad she broke up with you. Next time, maybe you should actually like the person you are with. I don't despise her. I am angry and I have a right to be. She looks down on white-collar workers and resorted to insults and name-calling when we disagreed. I still respect her but she didn't treat me well. Uda. Judging by your snarky response of thinking she would have held out for one more free dinner, no, you do not respect her. You claim she looks down on white-collar workers when the reality is the opposite. You look down on the blue-collar job of washing dishes as something anybody could do, and refuse to listen to any explanation as to why you were wrong, just as you accused her of doing. Your projection here is absolutely insane and you are beyond TA in this situation. As I did in the original conversation, as many people have pointed out, I only gave her what she gave me. If she is an odd to me, of course I'm going to be an odd to her. I'm not proud of myself, but it did feel good to dish it back, so to speak. Thank you. If the Udas had a stronger majority I might take their word for it, but it's not that close. It's not too much to ask to have civil conversations with people who don't lash out at me when I ask them to explain their position. That's basic respect. People keep explaining their position, and then you keep pretending they don't exist and saying things like if only the Udas had a stronger majority. That's why people are lashing out. It's frustrating to get asked for your opinion, give it, and then get ignored, multiple times. I didn't ignore anyone, I just disagree. It sounds like her kitchen is an especially bad place to be a dishwasher and I should have been more enthusiastic in my offer, but I'm far from convinced I was an offer offering help or to believe that unskilled labor exists.